The city always felt louder in the evening. Cars crawling through traffic, people rushing home, street vendors closing shop, everything moving in a rhythm that didn't stop for anyone. But on this particular dusk, the noise felt heavier, like the whole street was holding its breath without knowing why. 14-year-old Maya Carter walked along the cracked sidewalk, her backpack slightly bouncing against her spine. Her school uniform was faded but clean, her braids neat, her steps calm and careful. She walked the same route every day, not because it was the safest, but because it was the one place where she could pretend she was just another kid, not the daughter of the most powerful woman in the state. She didn't notice the patrol car slowing behind her. Inside sat Officer Grant late 30s, jaw tense, eyes narrowed with a suspicion he'd spent years feeding. He wasn't looking for criminals, he was looking for control. For someone he could lecture, command, dominate. And when his gaze landed on Maya pausing near the crosswalk, he found his target. Maya crouched to tie her shoelace. At that exact moment, a man jogging past her dropped his wallet. It hit the ground beside her without her noticing. But Grant saw only one thing, a black girl bending over something that wasn't hers. His door flew open, his boots hit the pavement, his anger walked faster than he did. Maya looked up at him, confused, her hands still on her shoelace. Before she could speak, before she could even understand the accusation forming in his eyes, Grant grabbed her arm and shoved her back. She stumbled, hitting the pavement hard. Her backpack slid across the concrete, papers scattering like frightened birds. People stopped, eyes widened. A few hands went to their phones. A quiet murmur turned into tension stretching across the street. Maya sat up slowly, clutching her scraped arm, staring at the officer who towered above her like a storm. Grant's face shifted, not with regret, with the cold realization that too many people had just seen what he'd done. Then the crowd parted. A black SUV rolled to the curb, doors opened. And a woman stepped out, tailored suit, steady stare, presence that froze the entire street. Governor Lena Carter, Maya's mother. Grant's breath caught. His mistake had a name. And what they didn't know would change everything. Maya Carter had always been the kind of girl who moved through the world carefully, not because she was timid, but because life had taught her to be aware. At 14, she already understood things most adults still refused to learn. She walked to school alone. She kept her voice soft around strangers. She held her backpack close when crowds got too big. She watched people's eyes before she watched their hands. These weren't habits she chose. They were the quiet rules every black child picked up from the world around them. She lived in the governor's mansion, but nothing about her life felt fancy or privileged. Her mother made sure of that. Governor Lena Carter believed in work, humility, and discipline. She had fought too hard to let her daughter grow up disconnected from reality. So Maya learned to stand on her own feet, do her own homework, fix her own problems, and walk her own path. The only problem was that walking her own path sometimes put her in places her mother feared. What Maya wanted most was something simple, to live like a regular kid, to walk home without a security car following her, to sit at school and have people talk to her because they liked her, not because they secretly wanted to brag about knowing the governor's daughter. She didn't even use her last name at school. She filled out forms with her middle name, avoided arriving with staff drivers, and refused to let guards escort her. She wanted freedom, but she also wanted safety, and the world didn't always allow a black girl to have both. Her mother, Lena, carried her own scars. The first black woman to serve as governor of the state, she had climbed mountains most people didn't see. She built her career on strength, intelligence, and a refusal to bow to anyone. But behind that strength was fear, not for herself, but for the child she loved. Lena knew too well how quickly things could go wrong. She had lived through the protests, the discrimination, the assumptions, the sideways looks, the judgment. She worked every day to reform the systems that harmed people like her family. But no amount of power could erase the truth she tried not to think about. Her daughter still lived in a world that judged her skin before her character. Officer Thomas Grant lived in that same world, but from a different angle. In his mind, he wasn't the villain. He used to think of himself as a good man, someone who joined the force to help. But over the years, frustration ate away at him. A falling marriage, financial pressure, a career that didn't feel like the one he signed up for, all of it pushed him into bitterness. Slowly, he started seeing threats where there weren't any. He started believing that some kids needed to be taught respect, and somehow, those kids always looked the same. He'd never admit it, but his actions told the truth his words refused to acknowledge. The city they all lived in was a powder keg. Tension between communities and police was rising again. Protests appeared on the news weekly. People whispered that another incident was coming, that something was going to break soon. In the center of all of it was Governor Lena Carter, fighting for a police reform bill that half the state supported and the other half despised. Officers like Grant blamed her for the pressure they felt. Politicians waited for her to make a mistake. Activists pushed her to go further. Everyone wanted something from her, and only a few understood the weight she carried. And then there was Maya, trying to avoid all of it. On the day everything changed, Lena offered her daughter a ride home, the same way she always did. Maya smiled, gentle and warm, and declined. She wanted to walk. She wanted fresh air. She wanted a moment that belonged only to her. Lena hesitated. She always hesitated when it came to Maya. But after a long breath, she agreed. She told herself the world would give her daughter 20 minutes of peace. Maya grabbed her backpack, stepped out into the warm evening air, and walked toward the gate. She didn't know that a tired, angry officer named Thomas Grant was beginning his shift. She didn't know that the city's tension was waiting for a spark. And she didn't know that one small decision, choosing to walk home alone, would carry her straight into the path of a man who was moments away from making the worst mistake of his life. A quiet choice, a familiar street, a normal walk. And a tragedy waiting ahead, where Maya expected nothing but silence and a sunset. The evening began like any other for Maya, the kind of ordinary day she wished she could multiply forever. The sun hung low, casting soft orange light over the sidewalks as she walked with slow, relaxed steps. Her backpack was lighter than usual. She had turned in 2 assignments early, a small victory she was proud of. She hummed quietly to herself, letting her mind drift between daydreams and thoughts about the upcoming science fair. And for a moment, she forgot she had to be cautious. She forgot the warnings her mother repeated before every walk. She forgot the stories she'd overheard from her mother's late-night meetings and the news reports she sometimes wished she hadn't seen. For that short stretch of road, Maya allowed herself to be a kid, just a kid. The city, however, never forgot its own tension. A patrol car rolled slowly down the parallel street, the kind of slow movement that wasn't about traffic, it was about watching. Inside sat Officer Thomas Grant, irritated before his shift had even properly begun. His morning had been bad, his lunch was worse, and by the time he put on his uniform, he was carrying a restless anger that needed somewhere to land. He wasn't looking for danger, he was looking for an excuse. Grant's eyes drifted across pedestrians with the same suspicion he always carried. A pair of teenagers laughing near a bus stop, a man selling bracelets on a corner, a woman crossing the street too slowly for his liking. Every small thing felt like an annoyance. Every shadow felt like a potential problem. His mood clung to him so tightly he didn't notice how tightly he gripped the steering wheel. Then something caught his attention. Up ahead, Maya paused at a crosswalk. She crouched down, bending her knee, fingers working quickly to retie her shoelace. She didn't see the man jogging toward her, sweat dripping down his temples, earbuds in, pace rushed. He sped past her just as his wallet slipped from his pocket, landing next to her foot. The man kept running, oblivious. To anyone else passing by, it would have been nothing more than an everyday accident. But to Officer Grant, already angry, already suspicious, it was the spark he had been waiting for. He slowed the patrol car until it crawled, eyes locked on Maya as she reached for her shoelace. From his angle, from the narrow, destructive lens he saw the world through, she looked like she was picking something up that didn't belong to her. He didn't see a kid. He didn't see innocence. He saw a target. Maya stood up again, adjusting her backpack straps, still unaware of the wallet. She took one step toward the crosswalk, a small, normal, harmless step. Grant's car stopped. His door opened. The shift in the street was subtle at first. People noticed without meaning to. A few heads turned, a few steps slowed. It wasn't the officer's presence that did it. Officers walked the sidewalks all the time. It was the way he moved, determined, hard, like someone already preparing to be disobeyed. Maya heard footsteps approaching behind her but didn't turn right away. She thought it was another pedestrian trying to pass. She sidestepped gently, making room. She had always been careful not to get in the way. Grant's voice hit her before she ever saw his face. "What do you think you're doing?" The words landed stiff, sharp, already accusing. Maya froze for a second, startled. She turned slowly, confused, her brows pulled together in a soft frown. "I was just tying my shoe," she said quietly. The officer's gaze flicked to the wallet on the ground, then back to her. In his mind, her explanation wasn't honesty, it was guilt. "Don't lie to me," he snapped. Maya took a small step backward, not out of guilt but out of instinct. She didn't want trouble. She didn't even understand why he was confronting her. "I didn't take anything," she whispered. Grant moved closer, too close. His shadow stretched over her small frame. His anger wasn't about her anymore, she was just the nearest outlet. Everything he carried, resentment, frustration, humiliation, was now pointed directly at a 14-year-old girl who didn't even know she was in danger. People nearby slowed their pace. A woman paused at the corner, watching with quiet alarm. A man reached for his phone, not recording yet, but prepared. A group of college students returning from class stepped off the sidewalk to get a better view. They didn't like the way the officer leaned in, the way his jaw clenched, the way the girl he towered over seemed smaller and smaller. Maya felt her heart tighten. She didn't want to raise her voice. She didn't want to challenge him. She didn't want to become another name in someone's story. She simply wanted to go home. But Grant didn't want her to go anywhere. "Show me your backpack," he demanded. Maya blinked. "Why, I didn't." "Don't argue with me." His tone had already crossed a line, and everyone around them knew it. Maya pulled her backpack strap protectively over her shoulder. It wasn't defiance, it was fear. Pure, instinctive fear. Grant took her hesitation as refusal. He reached for her arm, and everything in the street suddenly sharpened. Every pair of eyes, every breath, every pulse of tension. This was the moment where the world began to tip. And it was only the beginning. The moment Maya's shoulder hits the concrete, the street seems to inhale. A hush rolls over the sidewalk, the kind that feels like the world is waiting to see who it will choose to protect and who it will sacrifice. Maya pushes herself up slowly, palms scraping against rough pavement. Her backpack lies a few feet away, unzipped, her notebook scattered like torn wings. People stare, frozen, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they saw nothing. That familiar fear, don't get involved with police business, creeps into the air. Officer Hale takes one heavy step toward her. Not running, not helping, just looming, towering over her as if her existence is an inconvenience he's forced to manage. He tells her to stay down. His voice is sharp enough to cut. Maya's breath shakes, but her chin rises. She refuses to shrink. A mother with her son pulls him closer, whispering for him to look away. A street vendor mutters that this will turn ugly real fast. A college kid records, but his hand trembles. Nobody moves to help her. Not yet. Maya's eyes widen as Hale reaches for her wrist to handcuff her. His grip is cold, impatient, rehearsed. She yanks her arm back, not to fight, but to protect herself. That single instinctive motion is enough to snap something inside Hale. His stare shifts from irritation to something darker, something that has nothing to do with a traffic stop and everything to do with power. He threatens her again, says she's resisting, says she's escalating, says words she has heard in too many news stories attached to people who never went home after. And yet Maya stands. Her voice cracks as she tries to explain that she was rushing to get to her interview, that she wasn't running, that she wasn't a threat, that she hasn't done anything wrong. But Hale isn't listening. He doesn't want to listen. His authority is being questioned, and pride is more fragile than justice. He steps closer. Maya steps back. A tension coils in the air, tight, brittle, ready to snap. Then a car door slams from across the street. A man in a tailored gray suit steps out, expression unreadable. The onlookers barely notice him at first. All eyes are glued to the officer and the girl. The new arrival watches silently, hand tightening around a folder he carries. He sees Maya on the ground, sees the officer towering over her, sees the shaking in her shoulders. And his jaw clenches. The suit begins walking closer. Each step slow, steady, deliberate. He blends in like any other passerby. Nothing about him screams authority. But there's something in the way he observes everything, the way his gaze locks onto Hale as if reading every intention, every flaw, every lie forming beneath the surface. Hale doesn't see him approaching. He's too focused on Maya. He tells her to turn around, to put her hands behind her back. She hesitates, not from defiance, but fear, real fear, that once she turns, she'll be at his mercy. Her hesitation is all Hale needs to justify the next move. His hand grips her arm again. The crowd gasps. Maya's voice rises in panic, insisting she's not resisting. But Hale grows harsher, louder, forcing her closer to the police car. Her feet slide against the pavement, trying to anchor against the pull. The man in the suit's pace quickens. Finally, he speaks, calm but carrying weight. He asks what's happening here. His voice isn't loud, but it slices through the tension like a blade. Hale turns, irritated at the interruption, ready to put another person in their place. He tells the stranger to step back, to keep walking, to mind his own business. But the man doesn't move, doesn't blink, doesn't step away. Instead, he looks down at Maya, then up at Hale, with a disappointment so deep it's almost paternal. Hale demands identification. The man simply says he'll show it in a moment. For now, he asks why a teenage girl is being handcuffed for running across a crosswalk. His question is too calm, too direct. Hale bristles. The crowd senses a shift, subtle but powerful. People inch forward. Phones rise higher. A couple of bystanders whisper, recognizing the stranger's face but unable to place it yet. Maya, trembling, looks between the two men. Something inside her wavers, unsure which version of the world will win, fear or accountability. Hale tightens his grip on her arm, as if to prove he still has control. The man's voice, however, doesn't budge. He steps closer, almost within reach of Hale, almost close enough to reveal that the folder tucked under his arm carries a seal most people will only ever see in news broadcasts. He warns Hale, softly, that whatever happens next will define everything. His tone carries a quiet certainty that unnerves the officer more than any shout or threat could. For a moment, Hale hesitates. A flicker of doubt crosses his features, but pride, sharp, dangerous pride, shoves it aside. He says the words that will eventually destroy his entire career. "This is police business. I don't care who you are." A wave of murmurs rushes through the crowd. The man in the suit simply exhales, as if Hale's arrogance is a burden he knew he'd eventually have to address. He reaches into his jacket. Hale tenses. Maya watches wide-eyed. Everyone holds their breath. And the man pulls out an ID badge bearing a title that makes several onlookers gasp aloud. But Hale hasn't seen it yet. He's too busy trying to force Maya toward the hood of the car. And the incident, already spiraling, sharpens into something irreversible. Something that will bring the governor himself into full view. The ID badge glints under the morning sun, its gold seal unmistakable to anyone who takes a proper look. A few people in the crowd gasp softly, whispering the title printed beneath the man's name. The whispers ripple outward like a dropped stone in water. Governor Elias Grant. The man standing calmly between a frightened black teenager and an increasingly aggressive officer isn't a passerby, or a lawyer, or someone with a phone out for clout. He is the state's highest elected official, standing alone without security, without fanfare, without cameras, just watching injustice unfold on a street corner where nobody expected a witness with power. But Hale still hasn't looked. He's too focused on Maya, too consumed by the narrative he's already built in his head. A young black girl who didn't obey orders, someone he could control, someone he could intimidate, someone he could write off as resisting if things went wrong. The governor holds the badge up slightly, but Hale's back is turned, dragging Maya toward the police car. She tries to twist free, not to fight, only to stay upright as her feet scrape across the pavement. Her breath is sharp, shallow, frightened. Tears begin to swell behind her eyes, not from pain, but from the realization that nobody ever really listens to people like her until it's too late. Governor Grant finally raises his voice, just enough to slice through the officer's tunnel vision. He tells Hale to let her go. His tone isn't angry. It's controlled, measured, the kind of authority that doesn't need volume to be respected. But Hale hears only defiance. He spins around, jaw tight, eyes hostile. He snaps that the stranger is interfering with an arrest. He doesn't see the badge fully. He sees only someone questioning him, and that to him is the unforgivable sin. Grant doesn't flinch. He repeats the question. Why is a child being handcuffed for crossing a street? Why is she being manhandled when she poses no threat? Why is force being escalated instead of de-escalated? Hale scoffs, says she ran from the intersection, says she ignored commands, says she became aggressive. Maya shakes her head so hard her braids whip across her shoulders. Her voice cracks as she pleads that she wasn't running, only hurrying. She tries to explain about her interview, her mother's expectations, her scholarship dreams. Hale cuts her off. He claims that none of that matters now. He grips her arm harder, too hard. Maya gasps. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. Phone cameras zoom in. And finally, Hale catches sight of the badge the suited man is holding out. His expression falters just for a moment. A tiny flicker of confusion, then disbelief, then an uncomfortable realization he tries to hide behind stubbornness. He squints, trying to confirm. The badge seems unreal, like a threat used to intimidate. He asks for clarification, his tone suddenly less confident. Grant states it plainly. He is the governor. The crowd reacts immediately. A wave of murmurs rushes through bystanders. Some step back, some step forward. The air changes. What was a routine street corner now feels like the center of a political earthquake. Hale stiffens. His hand loosens involuntarily. Maya stumbles back, clutching the arm he had been squeezing. She looks at the governor, unsure whether to trust the moment or brace for disappointment. Grown-ups in power don't usually stand between her community and harm, but this one is looking straight at her, not through her. Governor Grant asks Maya if she is hurt. His voice softens, not pity, not performative compassion, genuine concern. Maya hesitates, lips trembling, then nods slowly. She doesn't trust her voice enough to answer out loud yet. Hale attempts to regain control, insisting that the governor is interfering with an active police procedure. He tries to sound authoritative again, but the quiver in his tone gives him away. Sweat beads along his hairline. Grant's gaze sharpens. He asks if Hale has his camera on. Hale freezes. He reaches for the small square device clipped to his chest. Except it isn't flashing. It isn't even on. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. Grant steps forward. His posture is still calm, but his presence becomes heavier, larger, impossible to ignore. He asks why the camera is off during an arrest, why protocol was broken, why excessive force was used, why a minor was nearly cuffed for a non-crime. Hale stammers excuses, technical malfunction, battery issue. He was about to turn it on. Grant asks why it wasn't on before the confrontation began. Silence. The officer's jaw tightens, pride and panic collide behind his eyes. The crowd senses the shift. What was fear of authority becomes indignation, anger, bravery. People begin calling out what they saw. Voices rise around Hale, recounting his actions. A teenage girl tells the governor she saw everything and recorded from the start. Her video shows Hale pushing Maya, not restraining her. Another man says he warned Hale the girl wasn't running. Someone else confirms that Maya never resisted. She only tried to protect herself. Hale snaps at them to quiet down, but the governor cuts him off. Grant tells him it's over. Hale demands to know what over means, but the governor doesn't need to explain. His tone is enough. Hale's career, everything he built on authority, control, and unchecked ego, begins to crumble in that single breath. Maya's knees buckle slightly, overwhelmed. Grant places a steady hand near her shoulder, not touching her without permission, but close enough to show support. He asks if she wants her mother called. She nods again, eyes glassy. He pulls out his phone. Hale's radio crackles, frantic voices asking for his status. But Hale can't form words. He stands suspended between denial and realization, between the world he thought he ruled and the truth he can no longer escape. Grant ends the call and turns back to Maya. He asks her to breathe, to take a moment, to gather herself. She tries, inhaling shakily. The governor then addresses the growing crowd. He assures them that the situation will be handled transparently. That accountability will follow. That Maya is safe now. People listen, not because he is a politician, but because his presence holds a rare authenticity. A pair of state security officers rush toward the scene from down the street, spotting their governor. Panic twists across their faces as they piece together what is happening. They pull Hale aside, but gently, far more gently than he treated Maya. Grant kneels, lowering himself to Maya's height. It is a gesture that flips the power dynamic entirely. The governor kneeling on a public sidewalk before a black teenage girl who was nearly handcuffed for nothing. He asks if she wants to leave the scene or wait for her mother. She whispers that she wants to see her mom. Her voice is fragile but steady enough to hold hope. The governor nods. Behind them, Hale finally sees the truth. Every second of his misconduct is about to be scrutinized by the highest office in the state. His face drains of color. He has just written the end of his own career with his own hands. And the girl he tried to overpower is the one standing at the center of the story he can no longer control. For a long moment, nobody moves. The street feels suspended, as if the world itself is holding its breath while reality adjusts to what just happened. Maya stands with her arms wrapped around herself, trembling quietly, not from cold, but from the collision of fear, humiliation, and disbelief. The governor remains beside her, steady as a pillar, a silent anchor in the storm that had nearly swallowed her whole. Her eyes drift to the scattered pages from her backpack. Essays she worked on late into the night, letters of recommendation. The application packet she had printed early this morning with hope. They lie across the pavement like fragments of a life nearly interrupted. A young woman from the crowd steps forward and begins picking up the papers. Another kneels to gather her notebooks. A man hands Maya her fallen backpack with a gentle nod. Pieces of the community begin stitching themselves around her, forming a quiet, protective circle. Hale watches, isolated. His authority has evaporated, replaced by the weight of dozens of eyes, judging, condemning, remembering. He tries to straighten his posture, tries to act unaffected, but the tremor in his hand reveals the truth. His world is collapsing internally, though he struggles to hide it. The governor instructs the security officers to escort Hale to the car and keep him there until an internal affairs team arrives. Hale opens his mouth to object, but one look from Grant silences him. Not through intimidation, but through a reminder. Accountability is now in the room. As Hale is guided away, Maya lets out a shaky breath she didn't realize she was holding. Her knees almost give out again. She catches herself on a streetlight post, trying to steady her world. Governor Grant steps closer, not hovering, not overwhelming, just present. He tells her she is safe. She doesn't answer. Her voice feels trapped behind the memory of the officer's grip. Instead, she nods, blinking back the sting in her eyes. More people gather, drawn by the tension, the presence of the governor, the aftermath of a near tragedy. Some approach Maya, offering soft words of support. Others remain at a distance, unsure whether to stay or give her space. But none leave. Nobody wants to abandon the girl who was nearly swallowed by a system right in front of them. The governor pulls out his phone again, checking for updates from the security team. But instead of stepping away or handling the situation from afar, he remains next to Maya. His presence is quiet, dignified, and daunting all at once. Maya keeps glancing at him, as if trying to understand why a man of his status would stay for her. She isn't used to adults with power choosing to protect someone like her. Not without an angle. Not without a headline, not without an exchange. Yet here he stands. He asks if she wants water. She shakes her head. Her throat feels too tight to swallow anything. He doesn't push. He only assures her that her mother is minutes away. A moment passes. A few steps away, the teenage girl who had recorded the interaction approaches the governor. She offers her phone. She says she has the entire encounter on video, from the moment Hale confronted Maya to the moment the badge was revealed. Her voice wobbles, but her courage stands tall. Grant thanks her, not with political polish, but with sincerity. He tells her to keep the original recording safe. His words send a ripple of empowerment through the crowd. Young people hold their phones a little higher. Older ones nod with pride. Everyone understands their voices matter. As more community members step in to help, Maya's breathing begins to slow. She presses a hand to her chest, grounding herself. Slowly, the noise around her becomes less chaotic. The scene becomes less threatening, less sharp. But the fear, deep-rooted and familiar, still simmers beneath her ribs. Governor Grant senses it. Instead of asking her to relive the moment, he shifts the scene around her. He suggests they move to a quieter spot nearby, away from the crowd but still within view of security. Maya hesitates, then agrees softly. Together, they walk a few steps to a shaded corner near a small cafe patio. The community spreads out but stays close, forming an invisible perimeter of support. The world feels safer, warmer, less hostile. Maya leans against a small brick wall, finally allowing herself a deeper breath. She waits for the shaking in her hands to stop, but it lingers stubbornly. Grant studies her carefully, not the way politicians observe for optics, but with a kind of fatherly scrutiny. Noticing the redness around her wrist from his officer's grip, the slight bruise forming, the exhaustion in her posture. He asks about her interview, whether she still wants to go, whether she needs someone to drive her. Maya looks down, guilt flickering across her face. She whispers that the interview is over now. She's late, probably disqualified. Her voice cracks when she mentions her mother, how much she had prepared her, how important today was, how she didn't want to disappoint her. Grant listens, fully listens, without interrupting, without offering empty comfort. He lets her speak, lets her fear unravel at its own pace. Then he tells her something that makes her eyes lift. He says this incident is not her failure. He says nothing she lost today is her fault. And he says someone should not have to choose between safety and opportunity. Maya's lip quivers. She presses her palm against her cheek, trying to steady herself. Then faintly she says she wishes she had just walked slower, that she should have been more careful, that maybe she. Grant cuts her off gently but firmly. He tells her she doesn't need to hold responsibility for another person's misconduct, that she didn't provoke anything. That running isn't a crime, and that fear should not be a condition for survival. Maya's breath stutters. For the first time since the encounter began, emotion begins to break through, raw, uncontrollable. Tears gather, then fall. She wipes them quickly, embarrassed, but they keep coming. The governor doesn't reach to touch her. He doesn't invade her space. He simply stands nearby, offering quiet presence instead of pressure. A security agent approaches, giving the governor updates, but Grant raises a hand for him to wait. His attention stays on Maya. Across the street, Hale sits in the back seat of the security SUV, staring through the tinted glass. His chest rises and falls rapidly. The crowd still watches him, whispering. His reputation has already begun unraveling in real time, not because of rumors, but because of truth. More officers arrive, but they do not enter aggressively. They step lightly, aware of the governor's presence, aware of the eyes of the community. For once, the uniform does not command fear, it receives scrutiny. Maya's mother's car pulls into view. A silver sedan, slightly dented, the kind that's been through years of school runs, grocery trips, and late-night drives home from long shifts. She parks crookedly, barely turning off the engine before rushing out. Her mother sprints toward her, panic radiating from every step. Maya tries to stand straighter, tries to wipe her face, tries to pretend she's okay. But when her mother reaches her, she collapses into her arms, sobbing silently. Her mother holds her tightly, holds her like she's holding on to the most precious thing she has in the world, because she is. Grant steps back, giving them space. The mother pulls Maya close, scanning her for injuries, demanding to know what happened. Maya tries to speak, but emotion overwhelms her. Her mother's eyes burn with fear, guilt, anger, an entire lifetime of worry condensed into a single moment. She finally turns to the governor, not recognizing him at first, only seeing a stranger in a suit near her daughter during a crisis. Her posture becomes protective, eyes sharp and distrusting. Grant introduces himself calmly, not with authority but with humility. He apologizes for what happened, not on behalf of the department, not on behalf of the officer, but as a human being who witnessed a wrong that should never have occurred. Maya's mother studies him closely. Disbelief and skepticism war inside her. People with power don't usually apologize to families like hers. Grant remains steady. He explains what he saw, what the community witnessed, and what he intends to do next. He states plainly that Hale will be held accountable. The mother's face softens, not with relief, but with a cautious hope she barely allows herself to feel. The rising action shifts here, not with explosions or chaos, but with truth beginning to rise to the surface, preparing both Maya and her mother for the storm still ahead. Maya's mother holds her close, refusing to let go even as Maya's breathing steadies. It is the kind of embrace built from years of teaching her daughter how to survive a world that doesn't always see her innocence. Her hand moves gently across Maya's back, soothing her without words. Governor Grant waits respectfully a few steps away. He watches the scene with a heaviness in his expression, not pity, not political calculation, but a quiet anger at the truth of what nearly happened. He knows this family won't easily trust him. He doesn't expect them to. All he can do is stand present, consistent, and accountable. Maya's mother finally turns toward him, her voice trembling but firm. She asks what exactly happened, not the polished version, not the official version, the real version. She demands to know why her daughter was touched, grabbed, dragged. Why a simple morning walk nearly turned into a nightmare. Grant recounts everything in clear detail, How he saw Maya walking across the street. How Hale confronted her aggressively. How the situation escalated. How Hale ignored her explanations. How he used force that was unnecessary and unjustified. Maya's mother listens, jaw clenched, eyes wet. Every word feels like confirmation of the fears she has carried since her daughter took her first steps out into the world. Fears she pushed aside for the sake of hope, but never truly escaped. When Grant mentions the body camera being off, something inside Maya's mother cracks. She exhales sharply, shaking her head. She mutters that this is exactly why she teaches her daughter to be careful, to talk slowly, to keep her hands visible, to not run even if she's late. Rules other kids never have to learn. Maya flinches slightly at her mother's words. Shame flickers across her face, a feeling she shouldn't carry yet does instinctively. The governor notices. He steps forward just slightly, meeting Maya's eyes. He says gently that none of this was her fault. She is not responsible for an adult's abuse of power. She is not responsible for an officer breaking protocol. She is not responsible for the fears imposed on her. Her mother's gaze softens at the governor's words. She looks at Maya as if seeing the weight her daughter is carrying beneath her silence. Before she can respond, a black sedan pulls up. Two high-ranking officials step out, the state's chief of public safety and the director of internal affairs. They approach quickly, faces tense, clearly briefed on the situation. Their presence shifts the energy. This isn't just a street incident anymore, it's becoming an institutional reckoning. Grant introduces them calmly. The officials nod at Maya and her mother with a deep seriousness, recognizing the magnitude of what's unfolding. They assure the family that the officer will be taken off duty immediately. They promise a full investigation. But Maya's mother doesn't want promises. She wants change. She wants protection. She wants truth. She asks why this happened in the first place. Why a girl walking to an interview becomes a target. Why the people sworn to protect her daughter end up being the ones she fears most. The officials struggle with answers. Governor Grant, however, doesn't. He says plainly that systems don't change unless they're forced to, and he plans to force it. His tone carries resolve, not theatrical, not political, but rooted in conviction. Maya looks between the adults, overwhelmed. Her world has changed in a single morning, and she's caught between relief, fear, and confusion. Her mother places a comforting hand on her back. Then someone from the crowd steps forward, a middle-aged black woman, professional attire, standing tall with quiet authority. She introduces herself as the manager of the Scholarship Foundation, where Maya was supposed to interview. She had been on her way to work when she noticed the commotion and recognized Maya from her application photo. Maya's eyes widen. The woman approaches with empathy, telling Maya she saw everything, that the foundation already knows what happened, that the interview isn't over, that there will be no penalty for being late. In fact, she says the board wants to meet Maya personally after she's had time to recover. No rush, no pressure. Maya's face melts into relief so powerful it almost breaks her. Her mother covers her mouth, tears streaming again, this time from relief, not fear. The governor steps aside, allowing them a private moment. Meanwhile, across the street, Hale sits stiffly in the car, watching everything unfold. He can see his future slipping away through the window. His hands are clasped tightly, nails digging into his palms. His career, once full of pride and stability, is hanging by threads that snap one by one. He looks around desperately, scanning for someone to defend him, for a sympathetic face, for even one person willing to see him as the victim. But all he sees are cold, disappointed eyes. The crowd that gathered around Maya remains, not aggressive, not hostile, but present, witnessing, holding the system accountable simply by refusing to look away. Grant walks toward the Internal Affairs Director and quietly gives instructions, not dictating punishment but ensuring transparency. He wants a full review of Hale's past encounters, complaints, disciplinary records, all of it opened, all of it examined. The director nods stiffly, knowing the depth of the order. This won't be a simple reprimand. This is the beginning of a sweeping investigation. Nearby, Maya and her mother finally sit on the low brick wall. Maya wipes her face, exhausted but calmer. Her mother strokes her hair gently, whispering how proud she is of her strength, how grateful she is that Maya held her ground. Maya admits she was terrified. She says she thought nobody would believe her, that nobody would care. Her mother's voice breaks as she says, "You're here. You're safe, and people saw the truth today." Grant slowly walks back to them, allowing a respectful pause before speaking. He apologizes again, this time directly to Maya's mother, not as governor, as a man who witnessed injustice and intervened too late to prevent the trauma it still caused. Maya's mother finally nods, acknowledging the sincerity. A small, cautious peace settles between them. But Maya has one question left. She asks the governor why he stepped in, why he cared, why someone with so much power would stop for a girl he didn't know. The governor takes a long moment before answering. His eyes lower, reflecting something deeper, an old wound, a memory he seldom shares. He tells her he once watched someone he loved go through something similar. He couldn't help them then. So when he saw Maya, afraid, alone, unheard, he chose not to fail again. Maya stares at him, absorbing the weight of his words. Her mother watches quietly, sensing a truth hidden beneath the governor's calm exterior. The moment thickens with meaning, one that bridges power and vulnerability, authority and responsibility. Sirens suddenly echo in the distance, a backup unit arriving late. The crowd tenses instinctively, but Grant lifts a hand, steadying the energy. The arriving officers recognize the governor immediately and approach cautiously, not wanting to escalate what has already become a delicate, high-level scene. Grant redirects them calmly. He instructs them to secure the perimeter, gather witness statements, and document everything thoroughly. The officers comply, respectful. Some glance at Maya with sympathy, others with shame, aware of how quickly one uniform's misconduct can stain them all. While statements are taken, Grant waits near Maya and her mother, keeping the environment stable. The sun climbs higher. The street slowly breathes again. The chaos softens into order. But beneath this calm, something bigger is forming, ripples that will soon grow into waves. What happened here won't stay on this corner. It will spread into boardrooms, courtrooms, newspapers, and political circles. It will test loyalties and expose truths. It will reveal who stands for justice and who hides from it. And for Maya, this is only the beginning of her transformation. She doesn't know it yet, but today will change her life forever. And it will change Hale's even more. The night the city reached its breaking point did not begin with fire. It began with quiet, a strange, almost unnatural quiet, the kind that settles just before something irreversible happens. The streets outside the courthouse were packed, but the noise had flattened into a low, trembling hum. People weren't shouting anymore, they were waiting. Waiting for the decision, waiting for justice, waiting for someone to tell them that their grief had been heard. Inside the courthouse, Governor Lena Carter sat alone in a narrow office borrowed from a junior clerk. The walls were cream-colored and bare, but the silence pressed down like concrete. Her hands were clasped together so tightly her nails left red half-moons in her palms. Every breath shook a little. Hours had passed since the prosecutor delivered the last argument. Hours since the jurors had filed into a small, windowless room to decide the fate of Officer Thomas Grant. The man who had killed her daughter. She wanted to cry, she wanted to scream. She wanted to tear down the walls of the courthouse with her bare hands. But she had done none of those things. She had learned a long time ago that the world watched her every second, her voice, her face, her reactions. Her grief had to be tidy. Her rage had to be silent. Her heartbreak had to be professional. But tonight, none of that felt possible. Her brother, Marcus, paced the room. His steps echoed like a metronome, ticking toward the moment they all feared. "She should be here," he muttered. "She should be home, she should be safe, and instead—" He broke off, choking on the words. Lena shut her eyes. She saw Maya's smile. She saw her daughter's hand slipping from hers at the mansion gate. She saw her walking down the sunlit street, unaware of the man waiting around the corner with suspicion in his eyes and a gun on his hip. Her jaw trembled. "She's gone," Marcus whispered, voice cracking. "And that man gets to sit in that courtroom like a human being." Lena swallowed the pain that rose inside her. The door opened. A young aide stepped in, face pale. "Governor, the jury is returning." Outside, the crowd felt the shift like a shiver passing through thousands of bodies at once. Camera lights flicked on. Reporters straightened their microphones. Protesters raised their signs higher. And somewhere in the mass of people, Gerald Reeves gripped his megaphone so tightly his knuckles whitened. This was the moment. The one he had promised his community would matter. The one he had sworn would show whether justice could exist for a child who looked like their children. Inside the courtroom, tension coiled like a wire pulled to its limit. Every seat was filled. Every camera pointed forward. Officer Thomas Grant sat stiffly beside his lawyer, staring straight ahead with a blank, unreadable face. But his fingers twitching against his knee betrayed him. The judge entered. Everyone rose. And then the jurors filed in 12 people carrying the weight of a shattered family, a divided city, and a nation watching with clenched fists. Lena entered quietly through a side door. She walked with steady steps that cost her more strength than anyone could imagine. She didn't look at Grant. She didn't look at the cameras. She walked to her seat, sat down, folded her hands, and waited. The foreperson stood. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom froze. "In the charge of voluntary manslaughter," the foreperson read, "we find the defendant." The pause was only half a second. It felt like a lifetime. "Not guilty." The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, cries, the crack of a fist against a chair, the thump of someone collapsing into sobs. And Lena couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred. The world spun. Something inside her chest tore open, the wound ripping wider, deeper than it had even the day Maya died. "Not guilty. Not guilty." Her daughter's life reduced to a legal technicality. Her child's humanity erased by 12 strangers who would go home tonight and sleep in warm beds while Maya slept in the ground. Marcus surged to his feet. "You murder someone's kid and walk free?" His voice boomed across the room. "You call that justice?" A bailiff tried to move toward him, but the judge slammed her gavel. "Order, orders." But there was no order left to be found. Officer Grant exhaled, long and relieved, as though a weight had been lifted, never mind that he had put a child in the grave. His lawyer patted his shoulder. Reporters whispered like excited insects. And Lena sat there, a statue of grief, her body still but her heart collapsing inward. Gerald Reeves, who had been watching from the back, turned and walked out of the courtroom without a word. His silence was not calm. It was a storm gathering in his bones. Outside, the verdict hit the crowd like a bomb. At first came the silence, the same awful, suffocating silence Lena had felt in the office hours earlier. Then came a scream somewhere near the front, then another, and then the roar. "No justice, no peace." "Say her name." "Maya Carter." A plastic bottle flew. Then a tear gas canister arced through the air. Someone shoved, someone fell. A line of riot shields tightened. Lena came out the side entrance, surrounded by security. People spotted her. Hands reached for her. Cameras flashed. Voices called her name, pleading, furious, desperate. "Governor Carter, do you accept the verdict? Your daughter deserved better. What are you going to do now?" Her throat closed. She had no answer. She had no air. Marcus pushed forward, shielding her with his body. "Back up," he barked. "Back the hell up." Lena staggered into the back seat of the car. When the door shut, the chaos outside muffled into a dull, trembling roar. She put her hands over her face. "Maya," she whispered, "baby, I'm so sorry." But the city didn't have time to grieve with her. It was already burning. A trash can tipped and became a torch. A barricade caught fire. Windows shattered. Protesters, police, bystanders, the lines blurred as panic swept through the streets. And at the center of it was Gerald, standing on the hood of a car, megaphone in hand, face lit by flames. "They told us our children don't matter," he shouted. "They told us killing a black child carries no consequence. If the system won't protect us, we protect us." Crowds surged toward him. Meanwhile, Officer Grant exited the courthouse through a side alley, escorted by 2 officers. He fumbled with his jacket, looking shaken for the first time all day. A brick smashed near his feet. Someone shouted his name. He ducked into a vehicle and sped off with a swarm of protesters chasing behind. The city was a battlefield now. But the turning point had not yet arrived. It came 20 minutes later, when Lena told her driver to stop. They were still in the city, the streets glowing with firelight and sirens. Her security detail protested, but she didn't hear them. She stepped out of the car and walked toward the chaos. "Governor, you can't." She didn't slow. Not when protesters saw her. Not when police saw her. Not when cameras found her silhouette against the flames. She walked into the center of the riot, into the eye of the storm, until she stood between two groups about to collide. A wall of riot shields on one side and hundreds of grief-stricken people on the other. Someone screamed her name. Someone else begged her to leave. Someone tried to pull her back. But Lena raised her hand. And everything, the shouting, the marching, the clash of shields, hesitated. Just for a second. Her voice cut through the night. My child was killed. The words trembled, raw and unshielded. My child was killed, she repeated louder, and today the world told me her life had no value. People quieted. Even the officers lowered their shields a fraction. Lena stood alone in the center of the street, tears streaking her face, illuminated by firelight. But I am begging you, she said, breath shaking, do not burn down this city for her. Maya deserved a world that healed, not one that destroyed itself. Someone shouted from the crowd, then where is justice, Governor? Lena turned, and the pain in her eyes was a wound. I don't know, she whispered, but I will spend the rest of my life finding it. For a heartbeat, the whole city seemed to exhale. The fire crackled. A siren wailed in the distance. Gerald Reeves stepped forward, eyes burning with fury and heartbreak. Words won't fix this, he said quietly. Lena met his gaze, then help me rebuild what's broken. A moment stretched between them, the weight of a choice that could reshape everything. The riot didn't end that night. The city didn't heal. But in that fragile second, between the rage of a grieving community and the grief of a shattered mother, something shifted. A new path opened. Not peace, not forgiveness, but the first trembling step toward the truth. The real turning point had arrived, not with a verdict, not with fire, but with a mother stepping alone between two forces ready to destroy each other. The morning after the verdict, the streets smelled of smoke, damp asphalt, and a lingering tension that refused to be washed away. The riot had ended hours ago, but the damage remained. Broken glass littered sidewalks. Burned trash cans had cooled to blackened ash. Fences were twisted. The echo of last night's screams still vibrated in the walls of the city. Governor Lena Carter walked slowly through the streets, flanked by aides and a small security detail. She didn't hurry. She had to see for herself what had been left in the aftermath, not just the physical damage, but the human one. She felt it in every heartbeat, the weight of a community betrayed and the fragile hope that something could be rebuilt. Everywhere she looked, people moved cautiously. Residents returned to assess homes, shops, and streets. Some stared at her silently, anger and grief written across their faces. Some nodded with quiet respect, recognizing her from last night, remembering how she had stepped between them and chaos with nothing but her presence and her words. At the center of it all, near the crosswalk where Maya had almost been crushed under injustice, a small group had gathered. Among them was Gerald Reeves, standing tall despite exhaustion, his megaphone slung over his shoulder. Around him, children clung to parents' hands. People helped each other clean debris. A small mural had begun to form on a brick wall. Candles, flowers, a painted heart, and the words Maya Carter, always remembered asterisk. Lena approached slowly, observing the quiet acts of care and solidarity. The community's resilience was fragile but undeniable. She knelt down beside the mural, placing her hand gently on a candle that hadn't yet burned out. She thought of Maya, not just the child she had lost, but the spirit of every child who walked streets where the world failed to see them as innocent, as human, as precious. Gerald stepped forward, hesitant but determined. Governor Carter, he said, voice low but firm, we're tired of words, tired of promises that never turn into action. Our kids, our community, we need change, not speeches. She nodded slowly. I know, she said softly, and I intend to make it real, not just for Maya, not just for you, but for every child who should never have to fear the people sworn to protect them. A security officer approached, handing her an envelope. Inside were photos, complaints, and internal reports related to Officer Thomas Grant. His record, once buried and ignored, was now fully exposed. Lena examined them carefully. Every disciplinary note, every citizen complaint, every report of misconduct painted a clear, undeniable picture. She felt her jaw tighten with a mix of righteous anger and determination. This was the evidence of a system that had failed too many times, and she would use it to make sure it could not fail again. The governor turned to Gerald. We will hold those responsible accountable, and we will create safeguards to ensure this does not happen again. Oversight, community programs, transparency. We will rebuild trust, not just repair buildings. Gerald studied her, looking past her words into the depth of her conviction. Slowly, he nodded. Actions matter more than promises, he said, but I'll hold you to it. Meanwhile, across the street, Maya and her mother walked together for the first time in hours without fear pulling at their shoulders. Her mother held her hand firmly, eyes scanning for danger but also glancing at Maya with pride. Maya had survived. She had stood tall when faced with authority that saw her as less than human, and now, somehow, she felt a spark of empowerment ignite within her. They paused at the corner where the officer had confronted her. Maya bent down, gently straightening the papers that had blown away, smoothing her notebook covers. Her mother crouched beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You were brave today," her mother whispered. "More than I could ever be." Maya shook her head. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. I tried to be me. I tried to walk like normal people do. That shouldn't be brave." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "It is brave, baby, because standing up to fear, even just by surviving it, is the bravest thing in the world." Maya's lips quivered, but she nodded, finally allowing a small, fragile smile to emerge. It was a smile built not on triumph, but on endurance. A smile that carried the weight of trauma, but also the first threads of hope. Later that day, Governor Carter convened a press conference. Cameras clicked, microphones leaned forward, and reporters waited eagerly for a statement. She spoke not only as a politician, but as a mother who had faced grief and injustice personally. She recounted the events, acknowledged the failings, and outlined a plan for systemic reform. "Accountability is not optional," she said, voice steady. "We will ensure every officer, every supervisor, and every leader within the department understands that no child's life can be minimized, ignored, or mishandled. Maya Carter's story will not be forgotten, and it will change the way we protect and respect our communities moving forward." Her words rippled through the media and social channels. Public response was intense, but for once it felt like the city might listen, might change. Change would take years, but the first seeds had been planted. Maya, sitting quietly in the front row behind her mother, listened. She felt a new power in her chest, not the kind of authority adults wield, but the quiet strength that comes from witnessing truth, from being seen, from surviving. She understood now that courage was not the absence of fear, but the persistence to move forward despite it. Days passed. Officer Grant was placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Charges were being pursued in connection with his misconduct. The city council began discussions about body cameras, oversight committees, and mandatory bias training. Lena Carter met with educators, community leaders, and families to ensure that the reforms would be tangible, not symbolic. Through it all, Maya returned to school. She walked the streets again, carrying herself with a subtle resilience that didn't go unnoticed. Some classmates whispered. Some teachers nodded in recognition of her ordeal. But most importantly, Maya walked without fear, understanding that her voice mattered, her life mattered, and her presence alone was a statement of survival and strength. Her mother never left her side during the first walks home, but she began to loosen her grip, recognizing that Maya's independence had been forged in fire. There were still wounds, both physical and emotional, but the family was learning how to heal together. On weekends, they returned to the mural near the crosswalk. More candles were added, more flowers. A community garden began to take root, tended by neighbors who wanted to honor Maya's courage and ensure the street became a safe, thriving space for all children. Governor Carter visited unexpectedly one afternoon, walking quietly into the garden. Maya and her mother watched her approach. Lena knelt beside them, not with speeches, not with orders, but simply to plant a small tree in memory of all children whose lives had been endangered or taken too soon. Maya touched the young sapling's leaves. They were soft, promising. A tangible symbol that even after devastation, life could be nurtured, could grow, could thrive. The governor looked at Maya and her mother. "This tree," she said, "is a reminder that even when the world fails us, we can plant something new, something stronger, something that will stand even against the storms." Maya nodded slowly. She felt a deep sense of purpose stirring. She couldn't change the past. She couldn't undo the fear, the pain, or the injustice. But she could witness it, survive it, and help make sure it didn't happen to someone else. Months later, a scholarship foundation recognized Maya for her resilience and courage. She attended a special ceremony, not just for her academic achievements, but for the bravery she had shown during the incident that had nearly ended her life. Her mother's hands were steady on her shoulders as she received the award, tears gleaming in their eyes, but this time of pride, not fear. Lena Carter continued to oversee reform measures within the police department. Officers who had abused their power were removed or retrained under strict accountability guidelines. Community programs were funded to teach children and families their rights and to foster open communication between law enforcement and neighborhoods. Maya walked the same streets she had feared months before, now with a cautious but unwavering confidence. She knew fear still lingered, that injustice still existed. But she also knew something equally powerful: courage, truth, and action could shape the future. And on quiet mornings, she would glance at the mural, the candles, the sapling in the garden, and remember the moment she had survived not just an act of violence, but a system that had failed her. She had endured, she had witnessed truth, and she had grown. Her life had been irrevocably altered, but not destroyed. From tragedy had emerged resilience. From injustice had emerged action. From fear had emerged strength. And for the first time, Maya felt that the world, though still flawed, had room for hope, for justice, for change. The world can fail us in ways that feel unbearable. It can turn blind eyes, raise indifferent voices, and hand out verdicts that break our hearts. But even in those moments, courage is born, not from certainty, not from safety, but from the simple, unshakable act of standing tall in the face of fear. Maya Carter didn't have power. She didn't have authority. She had only herself, her truth, and the unwillingness to be silenced. And yet, in that refusal to vanish, she reminded a community and an entire system that innocence is not weakness, that dignity is not negotiable, and that even the smallest voice can demand justice when the world tries to ignore it. Justice is never automatic. It is fragile, complicated, and often delayed. But it is also persistent, relentless, and can be awakened by those who refuse to walk quietly. When power confronts truth, it cannot stand forever. And when ordinary people act with extraordinary courage, they light the path for real change. Maya's story reminds us that the cost of inaction is too high, and the reward of accountability is immeasurable. It reminds us to see the humanity in each other, to defend it when it is threatened, and to believe that no one is invisible when we choose to witness, to speak, and to act. Her courage transformed more than one life. It shook a city, awakened conscience, and demanded that those who abuse authority be held accountable. And it proves, with quiet power, that even in the darkest hours, hope can be planted, nurtured, and allowed to grow. If this story touched you, remember, strength is not measured by might, but by the courage to stand up for what is right, even when the world tells you to step aside. Share this story with someone who needs to see that justice, compassion, and resilience are never powerless.